Therefore, if a person understands that, he understands that this is the correct methodology, that is the Quran, the Sunnah, and the understanding of the companions. Then a person will realize that there is no harm and there is no issue in associating yourself to that methodology. That is the pure methodology. That's why Shaykh Al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, لا عيب على من أظهر مذهب السلف وانتسب إليه واعتز إليه بل يجب قبول ذلك منه فإن مذهب السلف لا يكون إلا حقا. That's in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 4, 149. Shaykh al-Islam says there's no harm, there's no issue, there's no deficiency, there's no criticism upon the one who makes apparent the methodology of the Salaf on himself. And he associates himself to it and he ascribes himself to it. Rather, somebody does that, you must accept it from him. And the methodology of the Salaf, indeed, it is nothing other than truth. So an individual who associates himself to that, then that is correct and that is good and it must be accepted from him. Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan mentioned some speech regarding this too. He said, of course it is correct to term yourself as Salafi, meaning that you are following the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of those first early generations who the Prophet ﷺ praised. He said that's good and correct. But he said that an individual, if he is calling himself Salafi, but his actions and his aqeedah and his manhaj are not actually upon that methodology, then that is just a mere term or a name he's giving himself. The reality of that Salafiyah is that you give, if you are associating yourself to that and attributing yourself to that, that you then implement that properly and accurately and learn it. Learn it and implement it and practice it properly and accurately. And that is the truthful nature of this term. Also, we can see that the scholars of the past, they used to use this term. So you have, for example, Al-Imam As-Sam'ani, one of the great scholars, in his book Al-Ansab, volume 3, page 273, he says, As-Salafi بفتح السين واللام وفي آخرها الفاء هذه النسبة إلى السلف. This is an association to the Salaf. As-Salafi هذه النسبة إلى السلف. This is an association to the Salaf. So that's Ibn al-Athir, As-Sam'ani. Ibn al-Athir mentioned after that statement, he says, وَعُرِفَ بِهِ جَمَاعَةً. And there are a group who are known upon that methodology. The Salafiyun, they are known upon that methodology. Al-Hafiz or Al-Imam Al-Dhahabi, Al-Imam Al-Dhahabi, one of the scholars, one of the students of Shaykh Al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he mentioned in his book Siyar A'lam Al-Nubala, the biographies of the great shining lights, the great scholars of history. He mentioned in that book, فَالَّذِي يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ الْحَافِظ أَنْ يَكُونَ تَقِيًّا دَكِيًّا سَلَفِيًّا. He says, a hafiz, somebody who's a scholar, an imam, a hafiz, what he requires and what he needs is that he needs to be taqiyan, he needs to be pious, have piety to be a hafiz, to be an imam, a scholar. Also, dhakiyan, he needs to be intelligent. He needs to be intelligent. And they mention a story about the intelligence of the scholars. They say that there was a scholar who, some of the atheists, they requested a sitting with him. Some of the atheists, they wanted a debate with this particular scholar. So the scholar agreed. They agreed to a particular time. That time, on that day, it came and it went. And the atheists were waiting. And the scholar didn't turn up. He was late and he was late and he was late. And after a very long delay, he finally came. Then when he came, the atheists said to him, we had agreed a particular time, etc. for this debate. Why are you late? He said, I was out on the ocean. Just prior to coming to this meeting, I was out on the ocean in my small ship or my small boat. I was out on the ocean on the sea. Then as I was out there, this big hurricane came, this big storm came, and it blew my ship across and it took me off the ship and I was thrown into the sea and the ship was blown away into pieces. But then he said, the storm and the hurricane the winds that were blowing around. And remember now, he's in the ocean. He says, I was in the sea and I'm not very good at swimming. But the storm was flying around everywhere and the wind was flying around everywhere. And the nearby shore, the branches, they flew off the trees. They broke off with the wind and the storm. And they broke off the trees, all these branches and things. They broke off the trees and they were thrown into the ocean. And just coincidentally, when these branches came off, the trees with the wind and they got thrown into the ocean, they fell together in the shape of a little boat. Just coincidentally, they all fell together, the branches one on top of the next, and they made a little boat. So then I got onto that and eventually got back to shore, and then I came here now, and that's why I'm late. The atheists, they said to him, are you being ridiculous? The branches were thrown off the trees, broken from the trees with the storm. That's believable. They were thrown away by the winds into the ocean. That's believable. But they coincidentally were thrown together just in the right way, coming together and interlocking to make a boat. They said to him, do you expect us to believe that? Just by themselves, in the wind, the branches fell together in the ocean, all of them coincidentally in one location together, and coincidentally they all interlocked and fell into place. Coincidentally they were all the same length and everything, and they made a boat. So are you ridiculous? You expect us to believe that? So then he said to them, well, if you can't believe that, you can't believe that this boat could have been made by itself. A small boat couldn't be made by itself from a few branches. You don't believe me that the wind could break the branches and make a small boat. Now how do you believe as atheists that the whole of this creation, everything in the world, the heavens, the stars, the moon that you see, was created without a creator? So then already they had lost the debate even before they started. He had used that example, that intelligence of his, to show them the falseness of their belief. He said, now you've just told me how ridiculous it is to say that the branches fell off just in the wind, coincidentally made a boat. Then how ridiculous is your statement as atheists that the whole of this creation, everything just coincidentally fell together and made everything that we see? And so this was an example that some of the people mentioned with regards to the intelligence of the scholars. So Imam al-Dhahabi said, a scholar, he needs to be intelligent, he needs to be pious, but the point being here, he said he also needs to be Salafiyan. And he used the word Salafi. Because people, they say this word Salafi, people have made it up now. Some of these individuals, I believe even that one who spoke about the Quran recently, Yusuf Estes, I believe even he was saying that this was Shaikh Al-Albaanee who made it up. Or that Shaikh Al-Albaanee made a mistake or something, making this name up or something along those lines. The reality is, Imam al-Dhahabi is using that, and he lived hundreds of years ago. And he's using the word Salafi, exactly as that. Al-Imam al-Sam'ani used that word, exactly as that. So these are terms that are known, and they are old, and it is nothing new. Al-Imam al-Daraqutni, from the earlier scholars also, similarly said, بَلْ كَانَ سَلَفِيًّا. Rather, he was Salafi. He used the word Salafi again. So this is a term which is known from the olden times, from the scholars that have come by from previous times, and it is not something new or invented or contrived by the likes of Shaykh Al-Albaanee or anyone else. Shaykh Al-Albaanee, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great scholars, but he didn't make this bid'ah of Salafiyya or this name Salafi. Rather, that is something, as we have now shown, the association and the ascription to the Quran and the Sunnah upon the understanding of those righteous Salaf. And this is something that the scholars, they knew throughout time. And they mentioned this word Salafi in their books.